It was the winter of 1379. Deep beneath a fortress in northern France, a young woman named Eleanor stood alone in the cold breath of a stone chamber. The walls around her were damp, rough, and ancient, as if the earth itself had swallowed her whole. Above her, faint but constant, echoed the sound of masons at work, the clatter of hammers, the scrape of chisels, and the murmur of men speaking in low voices. Eleanor had been brought here 6 days ago. She was only 23, the wife of a nobleman, educated, graceful, born into comfort. But now she was a prisoner. Her hands were bruised, her gown torn, her mind trying to make sense of the accusation that had brought her here. Adultery, a crime she swore on her soul she had never committed. For 6 endless days, she had listened to the noises of construction just above her. Every thud of a hammer made her heart race. Every creak of timber made her wonder what they were building. And then, on the 7th day, the sound stopped. The silence was heavy, like the pause before a final verdict. Moments later, the door to her cell creaked open. Several masons entered, carrying buckets of mortar and stacks of heavy stones. Eleanor frowned in confusion. "What are you doing?" she asked. They said nothing. Without a word, they began to stack the stones across the entrance of her cell. At first, she thought it was a mistake, some cruel prank or preparation for repairs. But as the wall climbed higher, her confusion turned to panic. She screamed. She begged. She pleaded to speak to someone, anyone who would listen. The masons kept their eyes low, their hands steady. The wall rose to her chest, then to her shoulders. Through the narrowing gap, Eleanor could still see into the corridor. And standing there, watching from a distance, was the castle steward. Her voice cracked as she called to him. She reminded him of her childhood, of the summers when her family dined in these very halls. She begged him to stop this madness, but the steward turned away and disappeared into the shadows. Only then did Eleanor understand. They weren't repairing the cell. They were sealing it, sealing her inside, alive. Her breath came in short, terrified bursts. The cold stones crept higher until the last sliver of light vanished, and with it, the last sound of footsteps faded. The silence that followed was unbearable, because Eleanor now knew that she would die here, entombed beneath the castle, unseen and unheard. And all of it, this cruel, deliberate burial, was ordered by her husband. His word alone was enough. In medieval Europe, a man's accusation could be a woman's death sentence. But before I tell you what became of Eleanor in that suffocating darkness, how long she survived, and what her final moments were like, you need to understand something deeper. Eleanor's fate was not unique. Her story was just one thread in a much larger tapestry of horror. A world where women accused of infidelity were punished in ways so savage, so coldly inventive, that they make death seem merciful. Because what happened to Eleanor was not a crime of passion or a tragic mistake. It was a system designed to destroy women in the name of honor, purity, and obedience. And by the time you hear what truly happened in that sealed cell, you'll understand why, for women of medieval Europe, punishment for adultery was not merely execution. It was something far worse. William the baker stood trembling before the magistrate, the chill of the stone chamber biting through his clothes. His voice wavered as he swore his innocence, that he had done nothing more than deliver loaves of bread to Mistress Marguerite's house. He explained that he had only entered her home to receive payment, that their conversation lasted mere minutes, and that not a single word passed between them beyond business. He insisted he had never touched her, never looked upon her with improper intent. But in medieval Europe, once a woman was accused of adultery, truth had already lost its power. The accusation itself was enough to damn her. The law was built to protect men, not justice. A husband's honor was sacred, a woman's defense irrelevant. The courts assumed that to question a man's accusation was to insult his status, and that the risk of sparing a guilty woman was far worse than condemning an innocent one. Women's words were viewed as deceit by nature, born of Eve's sin and temptation. Their voices in court were treated as tools of manipulation. So when Marjorie tried to speak, when she pleaded for the judges to listen, her words were nothing more than the flutter of wings against iron bars. The law did not hear her. In nearly every Christian kingdom of the 14th century, women accused of adultery could not testify on their own behalf. Their supposed immorality made their statements untrustworthy. Only men, husbands, witnesses, neighbors who claimed to have seen something were considered credible. And the bar for guilt was pitifully low. A smile, a conversation, a moment of laughter shared with another man could be enough. Suspicion was proof. Rumor was evidence, and reputation was execution. Marguerite's conviction came swiftly, as if the verdict had been written before the trial began. Her husband, Thomas, filed for divorce through the church courts, and it was granted without hesitation. The word adulteress carried absolute authority. Thomas took everything: the home she had tended, the dowry her parents had given her, the clothes, the furnishings, even her wedding ring. Under medieval law, a wife convicted of adultery lost all rights to property. Everything she had ever owned now belonged to the man who had destroyed her. And then came the mark. With a heated iron, they branded the letter A into her left cheek, a permanent scar that would define her until her death. It was meant to burn more than flesh. It was meant to burn her identity, to strip her of any chance at redemption. That single letter was her new name, her new face, her new life. When the pain faded, the punishment continued. Marjorie was driven from her home, spat upon in the streets, whispered about in church. Children followed her, chanting "adulteress" in cruel sing-song voices. The priest refused her communion. She was still allowed inside the church, but only as a ghost among the living. She was not excommunicated, merely erased. No one would hire her. The brand on her face was a curse that shut every door. In that age, morality was believed to be contagious, that a sinful woman could infect the virtue of others simply by being near them. Respectable households turned her away. The women who once sewed beside her now avoided her gaze. Even the poorest trades, washing linens, spinning wool, denied her, afraid that her presence would taint their work. She was cast into the margins, left with nothing but the dirtiest labor, cleaning latrines, sweeping refuse from the streets, scavenging scraps to survive. Some said she turned to prostitution, though even there, the brand made her undesirable, a living warning of shame. The cruelest irony was that the punishment forced her into the very sin she had never committed. Condemned as an adulteress, she was left with no way to live except by becoming what they had falsely called her. As months passed, the brand festered. The burn became an open wound, the infection creeping through her flesh and leaving half her face paralyzed. Her mouth twisted painfully to one side. Her voice grew hoarse from the constant coughing that came from the damage done to her lungs during her public ordeal. Each winter breath was agony, the air slicing her chest as if she still hung half-drowned from the punishment that had nearly killed her. After 6 months of humiliation, she left her village. She thought that perhaps, somewhere far away, she might find mercy. But the brand betrayed her everywhere she went. The scarred A spoke before she could. It shouted her supposed sin louder than her words ever could. Every town, every market, every church saw her and knew what she was. Or rather, what they believed she was. A for adulteress, T for thief, H for heretic. These marks were Europe's eternal prison sentences, punishment that could never be escaped. In one town, men threw stones until she fled bleeding into the woods. In another, she was dragged before a magistrate and ordered to leave under threat of whipping. In yet another, women beat her with sticks, screaming that her presence would corrupt their daughters. So she kept moving, always alone, begging for food on the cold roads between villages. She learned to hide her face beneath her hood, to beg quickly before anyone could see the mark. Sometimes she succeeded. Most times she was chased away. Her cough worsened. The cold nights became longer. The infection on her cheek deepened until she could no longer eat without pain. 2 years after her conviction, in the freezing winter of 1344, Marguerite's body was found lying in a roadside ditch between 2 small villages. She was 33 years old. Snow had fallen over her like a shroud, softening her features, hiding the scar that had destroyed her life. For days, no one claimed her body. No one prayed over her. She was buried without a name. Just a mark, burned forever into her skin, that had defined her in life and followed her into death. When the villagers found Marguerite's frozen body by the roadside, there were no tears, only procedure. The local authorities sent 2 men to collect what was left of her. They carried her to the churchyard, but did not take her inside. Instead, they buried her beyond the low stone wall, in the cold, unconsecrated soil reserved for suicides, heretics, and criminals. A place where no prayers were spoken, where no bells tolled. In the parish record, her death was noted in a single indifferent line. An adulterous woman found dead on the road, buried outside the churchyard, no name, no history,